Happy New Year, everyone. It is my hope that, and my prayer, that 2022 will be that year that you'll see some great works of God. Many of you have been through some tough times. COVID has been just an incredible challenge physically, emotionally, financially, and I could just go down the list. It has been an incredible challenge, and we're recording this ahead of time, but I know it's going to be released in the new year of 2022. And from the North American Mission Board, Kevin Ezell and Mark Clifton, we want to wish you a happy new year. But more than wishing you a happy new year, we pray that this will be the best year ever. Kevin, you ready for 2022?
Absolutely. Can't wait. I can't believe it's almost been 2 years since the whole pandemic started. I mean, we're 2 years into this. It's pretty amazing. But I love New Year's. It's like a fresh new grade card. You know, I had trouble academic. You always gifted academically. I wasn't. And so new 6 weeks or a new semester, man, I always felt good. And I got great potential, you know.
So you called it a grade card. We called it a report card at our school. So
really?
Yep, that was.
I called it being grounded is what I call
it. Well, that's motivation to get you to get your grades
up. That's the only reason they have me speak at college chapels is to show the 2.4 GPA guys they can get a job, you know.
What was your favorite course in either college or high school? Did you have one?
No, of course. I mean, who didn't love gym, you know? But I enjoy history. I kind of wanted to be an attorney. I
can see that.
I would have wanted to. I have a hankering to sometimes go back, and my daughter's been doing some prep tests for her. She's going to study to be one, and man, I had more fun jumping on there doing those tests with her. You know, I always wanted to do that.
Is that the LSAT that she's going to be working on?
Yeah, and so she said, "Hey, see if you can do this one." And I was real prideful. I got all 6 right. I was like, "Hey, there you go." What could have been, you know?
Well, it's amazing that you and I have similar backgrounds. I actually got accepted into law school.
Really?
And was getting ready to go. And I just asked myself, I don't have precise memory of the day, but I can remember the incident where I asked myself, why am I doing this? And the reason I was doing this is because my uncle, who is named Jess, my Uncle Jess, had a very strong practice. And he's with the Lord now, but he's a really stubborn guy. And whatever way he wants, that's the way he wants. But I loved him. I was the one relative that could, you know, just say, "Hey, Uncle Jess, that's stupid. Don't say that." And yeah. He wanted me in the firm. He wanted to bring me in as an early partner in the firm, an established practice that is just doing extremely well. And I realized the reason I was going is because I wanted his approval and the comfort of the job. Yeah. And so I finally said, no, I'm not going. So never went to law school. But yeah, I went through the LSAT, took all the tests, and was ready to go. But didn't do it.
But you've done pretty well. So it kind of flows right into replant. You know, sometimes you think you're going to go one direction and you end up going another. Yeah.
Well, let us give you a summary of where we've been. If you haven't listened to both parts 1 and 2, let me encourage you to do so. Part 1 of this series, so your church wants to replant a church, is where do we find a church that wants to be replanted? This is from the perspective of the church looking for a church to be replanted. Part 2 is common questions you'll hear if you get to that point, what I call the dating point. And you go and you talk to a church about replanting them or adopting them. What are some common questions? Now we're wrapping this up, part 3, in this new year, January the 6th, 2022. We're wrapping this up with how to prepare your church to replant another church. And we're talking specifically for those churches that have not done this before. And probably some of this is just to be expected. Let me remind you, as always, that Revitalize and Replant is sponsored by the North American Mission Board and churchreplanters.com. They're all about helping churches to get healthier through revitalization or replanting, or about starting new churches. And we just urge you to go and look at all the information they have at churchreplanters.com or at namb.net. So a lot of this, I'm looking at our outline. A lot of this is just basically change leadership. It's just things you would do for any major change that comes in. Let's start off with number one is communication.
All right.
Kevin, tell me some of the ways that you have done communication. And I would be particularly interested in hearing that first church. By the time you got to the second or third, they understood what's going on. But that first church, what happened communication wise?
What you're talking about is communicating to the actual church or communicating to your own church in order
to your own church.
Yeah. Yeah. It was all about helping them understand to be an Antioch church. And when I mean Antioch, it's Acts 13 where they sent them out. You got to think more about on the outside instead of the inside. I think there's a big difference between the Antioch and the Jerusalem church. And I always try to tell our folks, look, I'm grateful for what we have, but we have got to. We want to reach a city, we want to reach a country, not just grow a church. And if you help your people just start thinking outwardly, and we started just doing things for other churches, just anyway.
So you were doing a form of fostering. It wasn't called that. It wasn't thought about that. But right. you were helping. You're taking them in for a season.
Yeah, and we would do, I guess, what you say, a random, kind of random fostering or random blessings too. We'd come in and say, look, we've got X amount of money. Let's just go and bless them with. They need this. Let's go over and help them do it, and we'll take our people over there and knock it out. And talk to another pastor. What is the biggest thing you need? And we just go do it. Our people love doing it, but it helped. What I was trying to do is help them think of, we want to reach a city, and we got to be nice. I inherited a church that didn't play nice with others.
Really?
And they had a good bit of insecurity. Where we were in Louisville, Southeast Christian was the dominant church in the town, and they were all jealous of it. I was like, well, you gonna spend the rest of your life trying to be them or beat them? Well, good luck with that. That's a machine. And so we got to be.
They were about 15 or 16 or 17,000 back then when you were pastor, if I remember.
Oh yeah, I mean, and they're praise band. We could do anything. I mean, there's nothing we could compete with. The only thing we can compete with is we can get you out of the parking lot quicker. And so it's like, we got to just don't be that way. There's a lot of people in the city. Let's be who we are, but we can be a church that blesses other churches and looks at them as partners, not competitors. And that's not how they viewed anybody. And so we were able to turn that around just by doing these random acts of kindness, and then gradually working to fostering, and then we took on some campuses.
That is key. We could go back to episode one. Where do we find a church that wants to be replanted? I do get the idea that a number of pastors and other church leaders think it's going to a list, picking it and doing it. But you worked hard relationally, and you worked hard with ministry.
Yeah, and people have realized it's not with a motive. Like when we were doing that, my motive wasn't to take them over necessarily. I mean, the first church campus we took over, we actually inherited. We took on a good bit of we took their debt on, and that's one of the reasons they were so open, because they were this insurmountable weight of this debt. They couldn't do anything, and so that was kind of a liability. But you just got to prep, and I like what you said. Communicate. You have to communicate, and over communicate. That is the most critical thing, because they just do not want to be your own church or the one you're talking to. You cannot over communicate enough. I mean, you just got to make sure and let them know, look, there's some things that are going to happen here. We can't anticipate every problem, every awkward thing. We just can't anticipate every challenge, but let's just take it one step at a time, and we're going to do the best we can. Somebody's got to help them, and we're the ones to do that.
Well, just a few minutes ago, you mentioned both Jerusalem and Antioch. Of course, I have to get my mind right. Antioch is a town in the Nashville area. So I think, in fact,
I'm thinking more New Testament.
Yeah, I'm thinking more. Amy J, do you remember we had Dave Ramsey in chapel one day? Didn't he say he was from Antioch? I think she's yeah. So what good can come out of Antioch? Dave Ramsey comes out of. We're talking about the New Testament. Basically, what you were doing when you were communicating Jerusalem and Antioch is this is a mission. This is a New Testament mission. Put that in the mindset. We're trying to get your church ready to replant. Put them in the mindset. This is Acts 1:8, and it may be Jerusalem or Judea, but it's part of the mission.
Yeah. And typically, your people are either focused on how can we minister to our people, or how can we reach the people who aren't already here? And all I was trying to do is transition the thought is we can do both. We can take care of the people that we have, but we've got to be focused. We have to be focused outwardly. And that's what I was trying to accomplish. And then it just kind of evolved into taking a campus on, because that was years and years and years before it become, it was a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, we've never done it that way before, and our denomination doesn't do it this way. And so how come we can do it? Yeah. Find the people who go on mission at the church Replant. You've talked about that. Was that part of your approach, and is that the part of the approach you hear, that you're actually sending people either permanently or for a season, one of the two?
Yeah, when we started doing this, we laid out on the map, like, look, we think strategically. Here's some areas, but we want you to already begin to pray about. And we started, if you will, Sunday school classes, small groups, named after that campus. And so, like, we had an East Campus small group that met for a year before they actually even went to East Campus. Wow. And a Valley Station small group, and we trained them as greeters, and they had jobs at the Fagenbush campus already, but they began to bond as a group, and so they went out there as a group. But typically, they were together for anywhere from 6 months to a year.
That is neat. I don't think I've ever heard that before.
Yeah. Well, you always out preaching somewhere. You weren't there.
I am not out. Well, I am. I'm not anymore.
Well, I should give you the context. When you were a member at our church.
Yes.
You were always in high demand. So.
Oh yeah, people couldn't get enough of me. They wanted me all the time.
That's true, actually.
Prepare the church for an attitude of servanthood. Missions is servanthood, but this is a good reminder for your people at your existing church that it's about bringing glory to God. It's about serving others. It's not just about, this is to get them off of the preference kick as well.
Yeah. I still remember, it's crazy when you said that, it triggered a thought. I still remember one of my we had deacons at deacon meetings, and he said, well, what's in this for us? I mean, how does this benefit us? Oh, and I said, it does. That was a softball, because I was like, I'm so glad you asked, because it absolutely nothing. And
wow. If you didn't get angry toward him, you showed a lot of restraint. But
no, I understand where he's coming from. He's a business guy. If you're going to take an acquisition, if you try to equate it there, you're going to acquire something. There has to be, a long-term advantage here. Or what is and he's just acquisition. He's trying to think what is the bottom line. And look, the bottom line is we're going to take over their debt and take all the mess that they've made of this, and we're going to work it together, hopefully with God's blessing, for good and to reach people. And what's really exciting is that they did that. Long after I left, they started doing it much better. The pastor there now, Aaron Harvey, this one particular campus, Valley Stations, they're running 500 or 600 now. They never did that, but it took years. But now, it's a flourishing church campus, and man, I'm just thrilled. 11 years later, somebody else they're killing it, doing so much better than we were doing, and never even dreamed. It's far surpassed. But it all started with people having to realize we're going to help these people, even if it hurts us a bit instead of helps us.
I love that. The servant attitude, man. That is a part of the mission heart, the servant attitude. That's all a part of it. Next point: communicate clearly that the church Replant is being adopted into the church family. You need to remind those in your current church that, and I like the fact that you said, Kevin, this is not an acquisition in the corporate sense, because an acquisition in the corporate sense is going to have columns, and it's going to have all types of benefit analysis, cost benefit analysis. Well, sometimes you just can't do that in the kingdom of God. You just got to give. Yeah. So communicate clearly that this new church is becoming a part of your family. And Kevin, how many biological children do you have, and how many adopted do you have?
3 and 3.
Okay. So I doubt that you ever think, which of these children do I love the most?
Oh, no. You think of which one's the easiest, but not the one that loves the most. Yeah.
Well, and the reason behind that is because they are all a part of your family. whether they came here through birth, through the Ezel family, or whether you adopted them, they're all part of the family. And we want to communicate clearly to the church that, hey, they're going to be part of the family. Treat them like they're part of the family.
It's funny you brought that up, because we were going through adoptions at that time, and that's exactly the analogy I used. So look, we have a pronoun orientation, and we got to change our pronouns, because they would say they, them, us, and like it's we. They are us. And you know, have people when we first adopted, have people now, how many kids are you? How many do you have? Are yours?
Yes.
I'm like, well, they all are. It's just crazy, some of the things that people will say. But at the same time, that's why I wanted to prep my church. As nutty as some people say, something they say about our own, we can't have that attitude toward these other campuses. They are us. They are Highview. They are every bit as much a member as you are. We're not going to rebaptize them. But I mean, they're a part of us.
Oh, come on, be a landmarkist and get your numbers. Get your numbers way up.
Yeah, we hose them down, count them half.
Finally, provide updates. We talked about communication on the front end. Now we're going to sandwich this in on and say, keep the communication going, because once the adoption or replant takes place, you're not done. You've still got a lot more communication to do.
I don't know if you agree with this, Thom, or not.
I do, Kevin, absolutely.
What we did is we focused on is all us, but then we did give them information specific to their campus. And so every campus had its own specialized, we did bulletins back then on purpose to make sure they knew, okay, here's how many we had at this campus, and here's how many we had as a whole.
Yes.
And we didn't do it all the campuses on one sheet. We had 7 at the time because we didn't want to be competitive, but it had where they are and then what it is as a whole. And so they felt like they had their own identity where they are, but they also had identity in a sense of a corporate. And what we did, one thing I'd encourage, one of the very best things, we had quarterly family celebrations. And we would come together once a quarter on a Sunday night. All of our campuses came together. If you have 2, I'd bring them all together. And we had just a celebration. We had baptism, all sorts of things. And then we'd have a big fellowship afterwards. And it really helped build those connections. And we'd used a praise band, praise teams from different campuses. And I remember, my word, we had it was just some of the most fun times. Our people would say those are the most fun things we did, is we come together and have the baptism. Our Hispanic campus, would baptize and lead and worship, and we're all rooting for each other.
I love it. I hope that this series has been helpful to you. Once again, the 3-part series is So Your Church Wants to Replant a Church. 3-part series. Part 1 has been, where do we find a church that wants to be replanted? Part 2, common questions you'll hear when you talk to a church about being replanted. And Part 3, how to prepare your church to replant another church. I not only encourage you to listen to these 3 or to watch them if you're watching us on YouTube, but also if you're thinking about this, go get some of your church members, your deacons, your elders, your staff, and bring them through this series, because it's basically a primer on church replanting. And I think you will enjoy, but you'll also benefit as well. Kevin, it's always good to see you, and thank you for being a part of this series. It's been very, very helpful.
Well, I hope it's helpful. It's always fun to be with you, so I appreciate you. Thanks, brother.
Well, thank you. And from all of us at Revitalize and Replant and the North American Mission Board and Church Answers, have a very happy new year. Once again, we encourage you to give us a rating and review on the podcast app you listen to, and go to YouTube and subscribe and like us there, because we're building that channel and we want to provide more resources for you as well. As always, thank you for being a part of Revitalize and Replant, and we'll continue to grow healthy churches together.